Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, has just officially confirmed a rate cut in the month of September. Now, this is good news for stocks and growth assets in general, but it is great news for risk assets like Bitcoin and small caps, which is why that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. My name is Royce Jacob, and welcome back to Waves Capital. All right, you guys, let's go over the rundown of the video, and then we'll dive into each subject individually. To kick it off, we're going to spend a little bit of time going over Powell's specific comments, the comments and the statement that really catalyzed a fire under the markets, not just crypto, but the greater markets yesterday. Okay. After that, we are going to jump into the charts, which is where we're going to be spending the far majority of our time today. Kick it off with Bitcoin. We'll then move on to Bitcoin miners, Riot and Mara, the king and queen of the Bitcoin mining sector. We're going to move on to the Russell 2000 or IWM. And then I actually want to close it out with the S&P 500 because I do want to say up front that I think there is a possibility we may be seeing a bit of a correction in the week ahead due to Nvidia's earnings on the 28th. I'll expand on that at the end of the video when we discuss the SPY. But we're going to kick it off bullish. We're going to spend the majority of this video talking about call options, talking about why I'm so bullish, of course, talking price targets for all of the names I just discussed on a short, medium, and longer term time horizon. But I got to keep it real. My portfolio is currently, just for full transparency, about 70-30, 75-25 call options, put options, and I am pretty heavily hedged right now. So I just want to talk about that at the end of the video, just for purposes of transparency and hopefully letting you guys, or just letting you guys know why I'm so hedged if you want to hedge yourself and if you kind of feel the same. Okay, so that's the rundown of the video. We will also be referencing the newsletters just because I have a bunch of articles that I want to feature in this video in the newsletters I sent out over the past couple of days. And yeah, that's the rundown, you guys. So let's get to reading. Before we do, please let me know in the comments, what do you think about all this? Do you think that this rally can continue over the month of September? Do you think Bitcoin sees new all-time highs in September? Do you think Bitcoin miners can catch up? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so Bitcoin blasts to 64,000, super specific, $853. Powell's rate cut hints lift entire crypto market. Rocket fuel. Bitcoin reached an impressive peak of, we'll call it 65K per unit on Friday, spurred by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole, where he hinted at the possibility of rate cuts in September. All of this, not really necessary. Let's talk about those rate cuts. Okay, so Fed Chair Powell indicates interest rate cuts ahead. The time has come for policy to adjust. It's a big sentence, big statement. Key points. Fed Chair Jerome Powell laid the groundwork Friday for interest rate cuts ahead, though he declined to provide exact indications on timing or extent. That's actually a big caveat too that I'll discuss when I talk about a potential correction in the shorter term. Okay, the time has come for policy to adjust. The central bank leader said in his much-awaited keynote address at the Fed's annual retreat in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. In addition to assessing the current state of play, Powell took considerable time in his speech to evaluate what led to the surge in inflation. Okay, so Powell playing it cool at his speech in Jackson Hole. I think he came off a lot more dovish or bullish than many expected him to. Granted, a rate cut was already priced in for the month of September, pretty much at 100%, which again, it's not guaranteed yet, but this was definitely confirmation of what many believed and hoped would be the case as far as rate cuts are concerned. Okay, and that's why the markets, not just Bitcoin, the markets overall, definitely ripped higher into the weekend. Okay, and keep in mind, if you guys do happen to be watching this at a later date, I'm recording this on August 24th. Just know that as far as price targets, as far as what we're going to be looking at on the charts is concerned, I am going to be going into September, October, maybe even a little later than that for most of these charts. Okay, so before we do dive into the charts, it has been, as I'm sure you can assume by my 75-25 call put ratio, and heavy allocation in IWM, which I'm sure many of you won't be surprised to hear. Small caps in general, Bitcoin miners, small caps. It's been an amazing week over at Waves Capital. And I'm really proud of what we've been doing and how we've been navigating this volatile environment. And if you guys want to know how I'm trading my personal portfolio, if you want to join the team, if you want to know, again, how I'm trading calls, how I'm trading puts, how I'm hedging, which we'll talk about later, on a daily basis, along with the trade alert newsletters that I send out every single day that I'm going to be referencing. We'll read over some of this a little later, okay? 2 of these puppies every single day, at least 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, okay? If you guys want all of this, then it's the first link in the description of this video. It's my complete portfolio of daily trade alerts, email newsletters, exactly as this box entails. You receive everything here. Choose whichever pricing plan you want, completely up to you. Doesn't matter to me. But if you do join, just know you can always quit if you want. You can always just unsubscribe. It's very easy. But I'm very proud to say that rarely happens. And I really am proud. This is like my work. This is how I spend all my time. This is what I spend the far majority of my time every single day doing, hours and hours a day. So it means a lot if you sign up. If not, no worries at all. Once again, that is the first link in the description of the video. And also, if you guys want this Waves Bitcoin canvas, that is in the description as well. 74 bones. And this thing's sick. This thing's like big. It's a little further back, so it may look small, but this thing is big. And yeah, I feel like that's pretty fair. So that's in the description as well if you guys want to pick one of those up. Bitcoin videos, got to plug the Bitcoin canvas. You know the drill. Okay, so read over this. Read over the Jerome Powell speech, okay? So, again, Powell didn't necessarily say anything surprising, but the markets are evidently rejoicing this confirmation of what was believed to be true. And that is very true for Bitcoin because Bitcoin's got a quick price range following that speech has rallied a total of, we'll call it 7% since Jerome Powell made those statements. Very strong volume as well. So as far as the short term is concerned, I'm talking the next few days. I do think that Bitcoin is I shouldn't say very likely, but I think absolutely has a potential to rally up to my conservative line of resistance on this long-term downtrend. Okay, so Bitcoin has been in a very pretty steady descending channel for the better part of 2024. Okay, and I do think that Bitcoin can rally up to what I would call absolute resistance. Notice how I'm saying conservative and absolute. Conservative because I'm using a whole lot of trend lines, more trend lines. Absolute because we're kind of using really getting a little greedy with this. And I never recommend using absolute resistance to trade. This is technically absolute resistance. I definitely wouldn't recommend trading on that. But even this, I would feel a little greedy. Personally, I'm going to use this trend line right here. Maybe we rally 7-8% up to the $69,000 region. But if we do continue to rally in the days ahead over the course of this weekend, then I think it's very likely that we come up to test this line of conservative resistance, which would take us to around $66,500, $67,000. Okay, come up here. I do think that will play exactly as I just alluded to. I do think that will act as resistance. We'll probably see a correction there. And again, I do think that if we don't see it before that, or I should say before next Wednesday, I do think that we get a correction with Nvidia's earnings on Wednesday. When everyone is so notoriously, or so unanimously bullish on something, or so that when the grain is so clearly going in one direction, that's typically when it's a good time to go against the grain. I haven't seen one analyst, I haven't seen one talking head say that Nvidia's earnings are going to disappoint. And in my mind as a trader, that's worrisome because that's typically when you want to do the opposite of that, okay? In the last video I posted, I referenced a quote that said the market's primary job is to make a fool of as many men as possible. I can't remember the man who stated that quote initially, but I thought that was spot on. The market's job is to fool you. If everyone knew what the market was doing, then everyone would be making money. I mean, that's obvious. So again, when something feels so unanimous, when something feels like it's just absolute consensus, that's typically when it's probably good to go against the grain because that's where the real gains can be made. Okay. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about Nvidia at the end of the video and SPY as we look at the S&P 500 and my correction targets there and why I'm hedging and how I'll give you guys my specific call options on SPXL actually at the end of the video, or put options, on SPXL. But for now, Bitcoin looking good. I do think if we rally in the short term, it'll be awesome. If we pull back, I do think that there is a very clear target. I do think that this line of prior resistance will come into play as new support. And again, that's a very easy target in my mind. If we do pull back, I think it's short term. I don't think it lasts into the month. I definitely don't think it lasts into mid to late September. Maybe we pull back going into early September, go sideways for a little bit, and then we're back to the races. But the primary point in the long term, I do ultimately think, let's go to daily candles just to talk a little more long term. I do ultimately think that even if it takes a little longer than expected, if it doesn't happen in the week ahead, I do think it happens in the months ahead. I do think that Bitcoin ultimately breaks out from this descending channel, and I do think that we make our way up to new all-time highs. My price targets being, again, conservative, absolute resistance, a climb of 30 to 40%, which is the line of resistance on Bitcoin's long-term massive megaphone channel, which would take us up to about $90,000. And I will say, again, it's absolutely possible we hit six figures. It's absolutely possible we climb to 100,000 plus. But again, not getting greedy right now. My personal targets for 2024, maybe early 2025, if the markets really take their time or if BTC really takes its time, is going to be about $90,000. Okay, 85 to 90K, I think is entirely reasonable for Bitcoin given the macro backdrop right now, especially considering gold's doing so well. Bitcoin Gold 2.0, have plenty of videos on that. Just go Google Royce Jacob Bitcoin 2.0 or Royce Jacob Bitcoin Gold 2.0. Have plenty of videos there talking about why Bitcoin is just better gold. And I do think that Bitcoin can follow in gold's footsteps, considering gold has been on an absolute tear. Okay, Bitcoin still obviously believe that Bitcoin is gold 2.0. I believe it's better gold. All right, let's take a look at Bitcoin miners, Riot Platforms, and Mara. Move on to IWM, close it out with the SPY talks and hedges. Okay, Riot Platforms has definitely been underperforming relative to the likes of Mara, but that's also what makes me more bullish on it in the short term. Okay, as I said in this newsletter, actually. Again, first link in the description of this video if you guys want my daily newsletters, daily trade alerts, daily price targets newsletters, just like this one. Okay, as I said here, I think that Riot looks a lot more appealing than Mara from an asymmetric risk profile perspective. Okay, Mara has been ripping, and I do understand the pro-Mara arguments, but I also believe that they'll continue to pass the torch back and forth in terms of percentage gains as long as they're the top two mining stocks in the space. Okay, so Riot has been underperforming Mara significantly. You could say Mara has been outperforming Riot significantly. And I do think that there will be some parity. Mara, thank gosh, I actually introduced Mara to the portfolio a couple of weeks back. Been able to ride some of these gains, and we saw some amazing gains on Friday with our Bitcoin miners, clearly. But I do think that if I was to buy one right now, I would choose Riot. And it's because, again, when Riot, which I do love fundamentally, I love this company from a fundamental perspective, when it underperforms Mara, it seems like a rubber band is just stretching out and waiting to be released. Okay, so I do think that these will find some parity, not as far as like the share price is concerned, but as far as kind of the gains are concerned. So Mara gains 10% this week, Riot gains 5%. I think next week, maybe Riot gains 10%, Mara gains 5%, like talking like that. Okay, so anyway, Riot, my short to medium term price target for Riot, if Bitcoin can rally, if Bitcoin does end up rallying up to this, another 4 or 5% in the week ahead or in the days ahead, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Riot rally up to this previous low, which is sitting above $10. So we can actually make our way back above $10 if we do test this prior low. The prior low on the downtrend, we are facing a bit of resistance here, this line of resistance, but I mean, that's a couple of percent away. And I really don't think that'll come. I don't think that'll come into play. I do think that this prior low will come into play. Let's see where some of these sit. Yeah, like a lot of these moving averages, these exponential 1D moving averages are converging around the $9 to $11 region. So $10 falls right in the middle of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see a $10+ Riot in the week ahead if Bitcoin climbs. If we pull back, I don't think we pull back very far. I don't think Riot falls back below, 785, which is my actually shark target for Riot. If we do see 785, 780, I'm definitely going to buy more long-term Riot calls because I do think that over the long term, absolutely by the end of the year, I think that Riot can very easily test this line of long-term resistance, which regardless of when it hits, would be a climb of at least 74, 75% if we see it by the end of the year. Okay, resulting in a $14 to $15 Riot, dependent upon when this trend line is hit. And again, if Bitcoin sees new all-time highs, I think it's entirely possible that Riot breaks out of this and moves higher, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's take a look at Mara. Then we'll move on to the little guys, little gems, small caps. Okay, so Mara again significantly outperforming Riot from a percentage gain perspective. Mara is a bit closer to that resistance that I was discussing, and even when we go to even when we go to 1 day moving averages, you can see that Mara is really in the midst of all those 1 day moving averages that I was just discussing with Riot. Let's go back to Riot. You can see Riot is well below these moving averages, okay? And Mara is in the midst of them. So that's why another big reason that I believe Riot will be playing some catch up to Mara in the short term. And again, if we pull back, I'm absolutely leaning more towards buying more Riot calls as opposed to Mara calls. I'm glad that I had Mara calls throughout this week. But honestly, I might even consider selling off some Mara calls to purchase more Riot calls, just given my thesis around this little game of leapfrog. And again, the analogy of passing the torch back and forth. Okay. So again, Mara a lot closer to that prior low target than Riot, but I do think that it's also possible if Bitcoin once again climbs in the week ahead, the Mara makes its way up to retest this prior line of support as new resistance has yet to be tested, which will result in about a 12% climb back up to $21 if we do see it in the week ahead prior to the month of September. Okay, that's Mara. Let's take a look at IWM, looking amazing. Russell 2000, beautiful. Russell 2000 calls over in the Waves Capital portfolio. I believe we're up like 77-80% on 77-80% just on Friday alone. We're definitely up on that position. Big win for Waves Capital, which I'd love to see. Let me know in the comments down below if you were able to ride those waves with me. Again, making money is cool. Making money with your team is way cooler. It just feels so much better, and it's so much more validating. But anyway, from a technical perspective, I really do like to see that the Russell did jump back above this gap range. Very, very bullish. Maintaining this very, very strong ascending channel here. Long-term ascending channel been in place since December of 2023. If we do climb, I think that it's very, very possible that the Rus 2K does end up rallying another 3 to 4%, like 3.5% to my conservative line of long-term resistance. Maybe see that little double top formation in the short term, pull back to... I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it again. I'll just discuss this in the newsletters if we do end up rallying. If we do correct, which I think, again, I won't discount the possibility of us correcting in the short term because Nvidia's earnings is coming up, I think that we could come back down at least another 2.5%. At most, I think we could come down like 5.25% to close this gap. And if we do see, I'll say 209, 210 again, I'll 100% be buying more long-term call options on the Russell because, again, even if we do correct in the short term, even if this was a little bull trap, I do think that come late September, October, November, December, small caps, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin miners, you name it, risk assets, hyper-growth assets, Veritone, rip into the fall and winter months. And if we see a correction, I'll honestly be stoked because that means I get to just shark up more call options. Okay. Took some profits, realized some profits. Always remember, you guys, on Friday, realized a solid sum of profits, reinforce my hedges. Just don't get greedy along the way. If you're well positioned, if you're making money on this beautiful ride upwards, this Powell driven rocket ship, then take some profits. Don't get greedy. Keep a cool head, stay rational, all that good stuff. You know the drill. Okay. So let's close it out by taking a look at the SPY talk hedges. The S&P 500, I do think, we're only, how far away are we from, this has to be less than 1% away from all-time highs. We are less than 1%. We're like 0.5% away from all-time highs, which in my mind is ridiculous. I think it's not near inevitable, but I think that there is a very, very high likelihood. No, you guys, my money is where my mouth is. Before I talk price targets, I'll just say that I have SPXL puts with an August 30th expiration and a 147 strike price. All right. You guys, members of the portfolio would know, very, very risky puts, but that's just me. That's not my only put option position. I do have some longer term Nvidia and Apple puts as well. But just know, you guys, my money is where my mouth is. I do believe that we see a correction ahead. And again, that's evident through my put options portfolio. One of 3 positions I just shared with you. Okay. So when it comes to the short term, I do think that the S&P 500 corrects at least 2% in the week ahead. I do think that we've rallied too hard. I do think that optimism has gotten too high. And I do think that the S&P in the week ahead prior to the month of September corrects at least 2% to fill this gap region. Okay, 2 to 2.25%. 2.25 would, I mean, there's 3 different trend lines coinciding perfectly at 9 o'clock. Okay, about an hour before market close on Tuesday, on this upcoming Tuesday. So we'll see if that plays out. But there are multiple trend lines converging, multiple target ranges I have converging at 549 on the SPY, 2.25% correction from where we closed this week from where we closed this past week. And again, long-term resistance, long-term line of support. This little gap range along with this short-term line of resistance. That's not really in play anymore. These are the 2 major ones. But I do definitely think that a correction of 2 to 2.5% by Nvidia's earnings call on Wednesday is entirely possible, if not likely. And again, you guys, money where my mouth is. These targets you can see right here. That's, I guess, a little look into how I kind of structure the newsletters. I probably should have deleted those before this, but those are my targets for the SPY to the downside. Those are where I will take some profits on the way down. Worst case scenario for the S&P 500 by the month of September, which I think is entirely possible if Nvidia's earnings are bad on the 28th. Once again, is going to be a retest of this very, very clear line of resistance. Strong lines of resistance like this typically come to play as new supports. I do think that it's entirely possible that the S&P 500, again, in the case that things get pretty dark following Nvidia's earnings, can easily correct 4.5% prior to the month of September to retest prior resistance as new support, resulting in, like a 4.5% correction, 4 to 5% correction, depending on when that is struck. Okay, so that's the video, you guys. Stay excited, stay optimistic, but also stay hedged because, again, as I alluded to earlier, when everyone is leaning in one direction, it's probably good to take on that opposite bet. Okay, again, I have more calls than I have puts, but I'm holding on to those puts tight as we move through the week ahead and close out the month of August. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you want to know exactly how I'm trading on a daily basis, it's the first link in the description of this video. If you want the Waves Bitcoin Canvas, it is also in the description of this video. And I look forward to talking to you guys in the comments below. Until next time, always remember, take action, make waves. Peace.